I got 60 gigs.
The recording?
Yeah.
All right. Ready? Cue intro.
Exactly. Okay. Right. 3, 2, 1. Hello again. I am Trevor here with.
I'm Jake, and we're from the Coast to Coast real estate team on Vancouver Island. Beautiful Vancouver Island.
Yes, absolutely. So today we want to talk a little bit more about the pros and cons of purchasing in a pre-build or a new construction, in particular, condo buildings.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they're kind of like we'll cover condos, townhouses, a little bit of single family. And for Trevor, both Trevor and I, this is something we both did.
Yeah, near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, near and dear. Yeah, it's first time home buyers for us both in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. It was a great way to get into the market. I mean, for me, like we're sitting in it right now.
Yeah.
Is brand new condo we bought. I think we purchased it. I mean, did all the paperwork about a year before and had a lot of time to sit and think about, how we're going to decorate it and design it and all that kind of stuff. But and you bought a couple years before. So I mean, yeah. Why don't you tell me some of your pros and cons, Trevor, for buying a pre-build first?
So, I think similarly, we both were buying or looking to purchase our first home when the market was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So I think, when you're a first-time home buyer and, you're maybe going in with 5% down, can't be throwing crazy offers around. A new build was such a good option just because, gave you the option to not be in that multiple offer situation where you are able to just select a unit and get it locked in. And a lot of people don't realize when you're selling a large scale development where you have, 60 units or something like that you're trying to sell, or 60 condos, the developers and the people selling the building are not motivated to try and get bidding wars for specific units. They want to sell the whole building. So
as fast as they can, right?
Exactly. So it's like they want to find if there's two people interested in the same spot, it's like, hey, how about you look at this one and you look at this other one? And they're not looking at getting, one condo to sell for $100,000 over asking. They want all of them to be sold. So it was a great option to be able to get something, lock something in, while still having the option to, not have to worry about being in a massive bidding war or anything like that.
Well, yeah, I remember our purchase prices was, somewhat recent. It was, you gave me your top 3 choices, right? Like, hey, these are, couple different floor plans, couple different, designs in the unit. And it's like, hey, here's my A, B, and C choice, A, B, C, 1, right? And, luckily we got A, but I mean, it's nice that, exactly. They'd rather sell the whole building than, get a bunch of extra money on a bunch of different units. Like,
for sure.
For them, obviously they're putting out huge capital to build these units and do that stuff. So that was definitely a thing for sure. And a lot of people don't know this, and I learned this somewhat recently when I was doing my purchase process, is like developers are motivated to sell these things because they do have money going out. They want to know that they have people buying them. A lot of people are like, you see a brand new place, and so you have to have a 10% deposit. Mm-hmm. Well, you get your realtor to talk to them and say, hey, we're only doing 5% down, and you have the story and why you're, or we'll do 5 now and 5 later, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
A lot of people know there is negotiations and that kind of stuff, right? Maybe not huge on price. Yeah. But if they've been sitting for a bit, just like any other piece of property, you can offer whatever you want on it.
Yeah, that's true.
And then another thing we'll talk about, I guess, is GST on them.
Yes.
Like on a brand new home. So that is one thing when you're looking at, oh wow, this condo's everything I'm looking at in the market's $400,000, and this one's $380,000, and it's the same size and it's brand new. A lot of people come into consideration is the GST, which is 5% of the purchase price. Yeah. Overall on on top of that.
So, and that's all new builds. So if it's built within a year, it's expect to have that GST.
Yeah, right. House, townhouse, condo, whatever it is, right? That's you're paying that 5% GST, and it doesn't go to the realtors. It doesn't even really go to the developer. I think they have a credit they can get back or something like that they can apply for.
Yeah,
but it's really just the government taking their their chunk of it.
As they do. There's many examples of that for sure. Now, of course, another pro is the potential for customizing.
Yeah.
So what were some options you found when buying in a new condo what type of level of flexibility did you have for customizing the place you're getting?
Yeah, for us, we lived in a pretty like large scale condo building where there was 3 different phases to it with, I think it was like upwards of 50 plus units in each building. So there wasn't a ton. So we had like, it was almost like a dark and a light like kind of color palette. You could pick like, the carpets changed a bit, the countertops changed a bit, the cupboard, changed a bit. For the most part, it wasn't like a ton of customization.
Yeah.
But there was a little flexibility and just kind of, you got to pick what you liked a little bit more in that sense. Like it was more shades and stuff like that. But I know like dealing with some clients on brand new homes, like single family homes, the amount of customization you can get there and getting them to add things for you is, you just put it in the contract. Like, hey, we want you to do this in the backyard, and we want you to turf this, or put in, extend our deck, or change the colors, or do all different fixtures. There's just like a long list of things you can do, right?
Yeah, that is a good point, especially with the new construction. This year I just recently helped a family from Toronto help purchase a new construction in Parksville, and it was similar where it was a single family home on its own piece of property, not part of a strata or anything like that. Oh, got the dog talking to us.
You gonna go into the other room or what? You go in here.
Quick commercial break.
Yeah. Well, quick. Okay. Anyways, continue talking, Trevor.
Yes. But with a single family home, obviously you have a lot more options for what you could do and what type of customization you could have. And I find that it was even everything down to the shower curtain rod, or whether you wanted a glass enclosure or not. And it is nice as well because unlike a traditional home, a used home, when you're purchasing from a seller, you do have that deficiency walkthrough, and of course you still have warranties.
Yeah.
And with that deficiency walkthrough, essentially you get to show up to the home right at completion or possession, or about a week or so before, and you have the ability to walk through with a representative on both sides and have basically a big roll of tape, and you put it on every single little issue with the place. So if it's paint or a chip there, or there's always going to be something. And so going through and having that second take to be able to go through and say, oh yeah, the walls are scuffed, and that is really a big bonus.
Well, yeah, because the first time, I remember when we viewed this, the first time you're so excited just to be in the unit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, like I said, like we didn't look at this thing. We bought it, from pictures, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are doing that now because obviously the market was so crazy, and you're just so excited to be in the unit and see it's a tangible, real thing you can touch and feel now. You miss a lot of those things, right? So it's good to have those, and you also have like your tickets where you can come back and be like, hey, maybe my flooring's popping up a bit, or my shower's leaking, or whatever it is, and they'll come back and fix that. But another thing on the deficiency walkthrough to note is, it's not like you're going to get up something like this close, like, hey, there's a little scuff. They do have some kind of rules within, it's like a couple feet away from, it's like 4 or 5 feet away from the wall.
Yeah. At the same time, both people have to sign off on it.
Exactly.
So and there's times where there's some builders that are more reasonable than others.
And I guess it depends on, like, if you're buying a $2 million, $1 million custom, brand new custom home, like, hey, I'm spending $1 million. I don't want to have to touch. I don't want to have to open a paint can in this house for a long time unless I want to change the color of the walls or whatever, right?
Yeah, and it's nice. It doesn't just stop at the deficiency walkthrough, because a lot of these issues can be covered by warranty, where you still have about a year or two to be able to, say, call up the developer and say, hey, it looks like there's an issue with the plumbing or whatever there is. When you're buying something new, there's always going to be, nothing's perfect. There's always going to be something, some sort of issue that gets worked through, and they know that, and that's why they have insurance, and that's why they have the warranties. So
exactly. It's
now what do you find has been some of the downsides? What's a con you find of a purchasing in a new build as opposed to getting something used?
I find so when you buy brand new, at least for me, what I'm noticing is just small things that you can think about. Like for me in this building, and this is going to sound small and petty, but like we're in a corner unit and there's no stairs at our end. So I have to walk to the far end for the elevator, the stairs, and it's annoying for groceries or whatever it is. Or, you don't get to maybe necessarily talking to the neighbors or and that kind of stuff.
The community isn't like established.
And then, there's so many people in here going in and out, right? There's a big condo development, obviously, so it's pretty busy. And then the last thing, it's like, good and bad that we talked before, is you never see the unit, right? So you don't really know what you're getting. Yeah. So at least for me, right? Like, so we were buying a pre-build and it was all from pictures, and they were so busy they didn't let anyone on site. Yeah. And they didn't have a show home. It was, hopefully the pictures like are as good as the place, because you don't really know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously, you should do a lot of research into the company that's building.
Yeah, that's a big
And
part
that's
of
what
it.
I did. I looked at a lot of their buildings prior to,
Mhm.
and to check all that stuff out, make sure it all, and like read reviews, like
Yeah.
called people, did everything I could to find out the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't really know what you're buying necessarily, especially in a market when they're just popping these things up in like a year or whatever.
Yeah, totally. No, and that's it, right? Is there could be things that change. I've seen some nightmare scenarios where people bought into a new building and all of a sudden the amazing finishings they were promised. Oh yeah, it looks like we had to cut a couple costs here, and oh, it's basically just as good as what we were promising. And the next thing you know, some corners get cut, and you end up with not as nice of a unit as you thought. And there are some out there that some examples in Nanaimo, don't want to name drop.
Yeah.
But there are some buildings where that was the case, where people show up on possession day and they're like, I thought I was getting a quartz countertops, and I thought I was getting really high end finishings, and there's all these little corners that were cut to save money. And
it's like, well, we went over budget on a couple of things, or these changes. Well, that's not, it shouldn't be the buyer's problem.
No.
It's we paid for this. This is what's in our contract. So.
Yeah, totally. No, and I think as well another. It's not as big of a deal when you're looking at a single family home, of course. But with condos, you're joining into a strata that hasn't been formed or established yet. Which is has its pros and cons. The pros, you can really be an early adopter and someone that's going to really shape the direction of where that strata is going to go. But you don't know. You might have a bunch of neighbors or people who also bought into the building that have totally different ideas of what they want for the place. Might have it's thankfully now, or maybe not thankfully, depending on your position on this. Is now there's the rental restrictions aren't really an issue, but last year or the year before, you would find people on strata who I think the medium age of people on strata council is like 80 plus.
Really?
And
I didn't know that. Wow.
So it's a lot of retirees, a lot of older people.
Well, they have the time to be able to be at those
to get really involved in the strata. And so if you're someone that's not super involved, you could all of a sudden be in a building where oh yeah, we don't want pets, and oh yeah, like
if you don't have one already, like obviously if you have a pet, your grandfather and stuff. But I mean,
that is nice.
It's tricky though, yeah, because like there was a building that I helped a client buy in, and after these restrictions have changed and stuff like that, he was very happy about it. And then now we talked the other day, and he's saying that they want to do a vote for maybe the 55 plus, because immediate age for them is like kind of in their mid 50s, right? So it's like, well, if you're not a part of that strata and it's already been established, like in a used building or a new to you building, there's pros and cons to that, but there's also pros and cons for a brand new building as well, right? For that,
you don't know, and it is so important to be able to join that count, know what's going on with the strata and what direction it's going in. It's one of those things where you could easily end up in a position where being in that 55 plus scenario, that is a rental restriction that is still allowed to have in British Columbia. But it's one where it cannot just be rental restrictions. It could get even more strict with and not just restrictions, but what the strata is spending their money on. There's a situation where in the building I'm in, where there was a special assessment very early on because there's people on the very top of the building were having a seagull issue. So there's seagulls showing up and landing on the building. And this doesn't affect anyone who's
95% of the people.
Just the people on the top level, the 6th floor units. They were complaining about seagulls landing on their units. Anyone on the 5th floor and below, they don't care. They're not seeing any seagulls, but because there was a disproportionate amount of people on the upper levels who were on the strata council, it quickly got voted through to spend, I think it was over 10,000 plus on a electrified anti-seagull.
Did it work?
It worked, and it worked, but it was an extra couple $100 per person that kind of got passed through, and that was fine. It was, at the end of the day, it was like an extra 300 some bucks or whatever per person.
I mean, I really thought about that, but
if no one else was, there's only a small percentage of people who actually are on the strata council actually voting and moving these things forward. Because at the end of the day, it's boring to sit on these meetings and talk about the day-to-day stuff of the building. So
Well,
it's a small handful of people usually end up
and
dictating how some of the spending happens.
Well, and usually, like, you think about it, like, I don't know about you, I'm not a big confrontational person. It's like, you go and do your job all day, whether you're a plumber, electrician, realtor, whatever, you're in sales all day, you talk to people.
Yeah.
And then you show up and you got to go to the strata meeting for 3 hours. And you don't want to argue with people or be that guy in the building that can create animosity. But it's just like, there's some people that they really take a big interest in that, right?
Yeah, hence why a lot of strata councils, people with a ton of time on their hands.
Yeah.
And that's what ends up happening is a disproportionate. Some of the craziest strata rules or proposals I've seen of people trying to make. There's one example, I think this was in Vancouver, where a strata council, there was pets allowed in the building, but they wanted to pay for every single pet in the building to get a DNA test, so that if any pets were to poop or pee anywhere on common property, they could test the poo and then basically see who was responsible for it. And thankfully that got shut down.
It's like, just clean up after your animal.
Exactly. But like, you're basically to the point where there's stratas becoming like the CSI for dog poo. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, it's just, you're going to spend thousands of dollars on like DNA testing for every single, but it's like, as ridiculous as it sounds, if that got the support from everyone in the building, like that could have been a new rule that's established where, that could have been a thing. And then next thing you know, you have some new couple that's showing up with their dog and having to realize, oh, I got to give a blood or DNA sample of my dog just so they could test. It's ridiculous. But it's when you're dealing with people and you're dealing with their home, you have no idea what type of rules or things could show up in the community you're investing in, which is like why so often, when we're talking with clients, sure, when you walk inside the condo, you're like, okay, layout works, finishing looks good,
building,
like the
doesn't
location,
smell bad at all, but it's like,
but that's about 10% of like the research is like you show up and you're like, wow, I like this unit. The other 90% is, am I living with a bunch of psychos? Or like,
do I have to get 3 locks on my door at night?
What's the deal? And that's why it's so important to like, so much of the research of a condo when you're buying is like, what's the health of the building? Like, is it have they been spending their money properly?
Do they want to test my dog's blood?
It's like, who am I dealing with here? And so that's so important. And also you get a good look in that when you're looking at like the minutes, because most of the time when you're buying a new condo or any condo, you'll be able to get the last 2 years or so of the strata.
Just any strata.
Yeah, any strata. It could be a mobile. Could be anything.
Yeah.
And that's where it's so nice to be able to look at these strata minutes and see. And the minutes are the summary of the meetings that they have all the time. And if you're looking at these strata meetings and you're seeing, some of the summary is like, oh yeah, Barb was screaming to Pat about, how loud everything is and how, they're tired of, people using dryer sheets because it's they don't like the smell, and you can get a pretty good idea like, oh man, like some of these neighbors I'm not too sure about living close to. And that research is so important. And that's one of those things where when you're walking into a brand new strata or brand new build,
you have no idea. It could go either way, right?
Exactly. You have no clue.
And it's like, you have some people that and when it comes to your home and these big investments, obviously, you have comments once you're buying and stuff. And once you're in there and you're in the strata, there's not always like common sense in the conversations and stuff. Like people just kind of like can fly off the handle. It's like, man, I hear you stomping around all night and you,
it's crazy some of the things that you could see, and at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, and sometimes it's 60 plus different homes that are all connected, and so it's when you have that type of common space and those type of rules, you end up figuring out pretty quickly what people are okay with and what people aren't.
And you hope that your neighbors, people around you, are somewhat common sense, a
little bit sane.
Same people
is always nice.
But I think overall, like Trev, like for me at least, if you had to pick like 2 pros and 2 cons for whether you're buying a condo, townhouse, single family. So for me, I would say the pro is like no bidding wars. Obviously, I think I stole that one from you. No bidding wars. And you also have a chance, a little bit of customization into your own home, depending on what you're buying into, a little customization there. I would say the downside if I had to think about it, would be the wait time, because that's one thing we didn't really touch on is the pushback.
Yeah, that's true.
I think you were pushed back like 9 months. You were pushed back 3 or 4 months. So if you're in a rental property like we were, and you're, hey, okay, I'm doing my notice, we're going to move out in June because we're moving in July 1st, and then all of a sudden July 1st comes and goes, and they're like, obviously they give you a couple weeks in between, but hey, we're not going to hit deadline. And you're like, well, I already gave notice, and my landlord's already having people come through to look at this, right? So that's definitely a con for sure. And then I think a con for sure as well, depending on when you bought, is if you saw the building or not, or if you saw your unit or not, right? Because like we were like mortgage locked in, everything did when we came in and did our deficiency walkthrough. So it's, I think that can definitely be a con if it's coming up so fast they don't even want to do a show home, right? So I think to react some of those things is like, you don't have a show home, can you do a lot of research, read into the building, find out who the property management company is going to be, find out who the developer is going to be, find out everything you can, like call the company and talk to them, and someone will tell you on their sales team, or your realtor can call them and give me all the info you got.
Yeah, and that's, like you said before, looking into their past projects. Yeah. It's like if their last project was with glowing reviews and everyone was pumped about it, then great. And if not, you see, well, it looks like in the last project there's a lot of complaints and issues and
well, you can tour it. Like for here with who we bought with, they predominantly do a lot of Kelowna stuff. Yeah. So we weren't obviously gonna go up to Kelowna and look. Yeah. But it's like if you can and they've done it something in your city or your town or the town over, just go drive there. Yeah. And see if there's anything listed and just tell your realtor, hey, I'm buying this one, but I want to go check that out. Yeah, let's book a showing. Yeah, let's look at this building. Yeah, let's walk through it and see, right? Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's one thing as well, you're starting a new community when you're joining a new strata, or a brand new strata, and also you're investing in a builder. Yeah. So it's one of those things where your down payment and your deposit is basically a loan with the promise of getting a place and saying like, hey, we're putting our faith that this is going to be a good project and that this is worth putting our money into. Yeah. So no, I think that makes total sense. And from the single family side of things, what are some things that you've noticed on kind of the single family new build side of things for things to look out for, a type of research that could be done? I think it's just being thorough in what you're getting in the place. So I recently just did one with a family. They're fantastic. And it's just making sure like, there's an air conditioner, there's certain things promised, right? It's making sure those things are, filled out in the contract, and you're being very detail oriented from a realtor standpoint, obviously a buyer standpoint, asking lots of questions like, hey, is this going to be done? I want to make sure this is done. Like, when you go to a home that's been built and it's been there for 20 years, if there's an air conditioner, you can see the floors, you can do this. Like, hey, is this going to be done? How is this going to be done? What finishing is going to be done here? Hey, it says air conditioner. When's the air conditioner you put in? Yeah. What's going to happen here? And then also like, don't be afraid to ask, like, hey, like my clients did, like, hey, we have 2 kids. We have 2 kids' rooms. Can we get different doors put on there? I know you have the hollow ones, but hey, can we get some soundproof or some actual solid doors on this? Like, ask questions and go through it a couple times. Like, I think we went through it 3 or 4 times, like even after we got they sent it off, and just to look and make sure everything was right and it was going the way we wanted it to, and they didn't, not I don't think this guy would, but cut corners or do anything like that. For right? Sure. It's just making sure everything's as promised. Because the last thing you want to do is get into the place and stuff isn't as promised. You didn't look at it enough. And now it's harder to get that developer builder to come back in and fix those things that were promised originally, right? Like I remember 10 years ago, my parents bought a house in Maple Ridge. Maybe longer than that now, actually. Anyways, not the point. Yeah. And not a memory lane story. Anyways, and they were promised all these things, and it wasn't in the contract. And they came into the house, and the built-in cabinets weren't there. We had like a big house, but living room. I mean, all the flooring was different color hardwood. It's like, you're buying a huge house, not supposed like this, and it's like, what's this? And the builder's like, oh, like take us to small claims court. Like, we'll go through the process, right? Like, that's so rough. There was a bunch of things that weren't promised. Yeah. And then, their original plans and all that stuff, everything just changed, right? They just started cutting corners, and all of a sudden you go into this house, still a beautiful house, but people are like, oh, what's going on there? And so that was supposed to be built-in cabinets, and now it's just this big open space. Like, yeah. Well, it's and one other thing that people a lot of times don't look at, especially for single family homes, is you can go to the city and look into how the process has been so far. Like we had a mutual client that was looking at brand new builds on Hammond Bay. Yeah. And there's a particular set of buildings that it was the developer was also the realtor who was also the builder. It was one guy doing everything.
And the layout was nice.
Yeah.
It looked good.
Actually, I remember touring that one. Yes.
Yeah, like the layout was good. It looked nice. But after looking into it before we were ready to put an offer, we were like, let's check in with the city and see what the deal is here. And the city said, hey, we've issued stop work orders for that particular building like 7 or 8 plus times.
Right, and this is the one that had that failed occupancy. Like
yeah, and so that's where it was like, okay, well, that's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
And there's one down the road that never had that issue.
Yeah.
But it was clearly, the city felt the need to show up and intervene and say like, hey, you're doing this wrong. Make sure you do this instead. Like, make sure you do it properly. And that on its own is enough to be like, well, if the city is having to intervene because they feel as though the property is not being built properly, sure, there are things that pop up every now and then. Like my building that I bought into, things were delayed like an extra month or two because the elevator inspection for the city was delayed an extra month or so. And that's something where, I don't want to say never, but very, very rarely does that, the date in which they start selling the building and the date that they say, oh, here's what the date of completion is going to be. It always gets pushed. There's always something that shows up.
And I think that's something to be said about your chat you said earlier about when you buy these pre-builds, these homes, whatever they may be, whatever category of home, you're investing in a builder again, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to do your research in those things. And because a lot of times, like, I mean, a single family home, you're going to go through it a couple of times, but like I said, you're really investing in a company or a builder, hoping that they're going to hit their target, they're going to get the quality promise is going to be there at completion, right?
Yeah.
And I guess another thing we should probably touch on before we kind of wrap this up and I ask you one more question.
Yeah,
is deposit. So because that's kind of different for a lot of people, right? Because some like a brand new house, it's just hey, you write an offer, they don't really have a set deposit. They just it's like buying a new to you home. Some condo buildings in townhouse like to see 5% and then a 10%, like a 15% overall deposit or 20%, and then like I said earlier, they're all negotiable, right? So I mean, I don't know how many new builds you've dealt with. I've dealt with a couple, but like I said, you can negotiate. If you're a person that's going to do a first time home buyer and you're doing a new mortgage, 5% deposit, if you explain your story to developers, is totally going to work for you in my opinion, right? So what's like, what have you dealt with on brand new stuff for deposits?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I've been in that position a handful of times, and it was the same thing with me, where they were saying, hey, we require 10% deposit, either 5% right away, and then another 5% at the 7-day rescission period.
Yeah.
Which is another topic that we can get into later.
Yeah.
But for me, it was, hey, I'm a first-time home buyer. I'm going with a 5% down payment. Yeah. That's also what my deposit's going to be. And like you said, if you explain the story and it makes sense for everyone, it's like, hey, listen, I have the financing locked in. I'm coming in at this lower deposit than what is typically expected, but with the first time home buyer, it shouldn't be.
There's a reason why I'm doing this.
Exactly. You're not just showing up and saying like, hey, I want to do it for 5% just because I don't feel like I don't feel like giving you the extra money. Yeah. But if you're coming in and saying, hey, we got our financing locked in, we have our 5% down, which is enough for us to get the mortgage and actually complete on the place. That's all they really care about. Is, give us assurance that you're actually going to be able to pull this off. And if you're able to do that, then there's never been a single time where I've had a developer turn us away, from Victoria up to Nanaimo. Not once.
Yeah. Even Parksville and stuff.
Right? I'm sure it could be applied to everywhere.
Well, that's what I mean. Anywhere we've dealt with, said from Victoria to Parksville, it's never been a problem.
No.
You touched on it a bit, Trev, the 7-day rescission period, because pre-builds are a little different in the sense of a used home because you don't have those same kind of subjects in a sense. Like you can have, once you're done, because there's a 7-day rescission period, which I'll let you talk about a bit, but once you're done that, you're pretty much locked into the house. So you can have an inspector come in and do the walkthrough with you, which is great to do because, look at, even though it's a brand new roof, maybe they, messed up on the shingles.
Or there even is a roof available at that time.
Right?
Most times just a hole in the ground at that point.
Well, exactly, right? So it's like, when you do this, when you do the walkthrough, it's, I offer to my clients and we didn't end up doing it, but you can get a certified home inspector to come through and walk through the house and do the thing with you. Like, hey, everything in here looks good. I went up in the attic and the insulation's all over the place. This has got to be fixed. Or, hey, there's a bunch of nails on the roof. They probably shouldn't be up there, right? So, I mean, talk about the 7-day rescission period because you've dealt with it a couple more times than I have.
Yeah. So it's, essentially much like the 3-day rescission period that showed up as of this year, where it was, you basically to combat subject free offers, you put an offer in, you would have 3 days to basically, without any explanation, you can walk away, and then you would lose 0.25% of the purchase price. The buyer would have to pay the seller that. That's not the same with the 7-day rescission period for all new builds, new developments. You basically put in your offer. You say, yep, we're good to go. We're locking in this unit. You have 7 days to decide whether you're actually going to pull the trigger on it or not. So that's where you can, figure out, are you 100% sure, speaking to the mortgage broker, that we can get this? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, oh, insurance is going to be fine. Yes. Is this even the right financial move? Maybe you're riding the high of, hey, we just bought a new place. That was amazing. And then you sleep on it for 7 days, and it's like, okay, do we still want this place?
Yeah, do I really want to live in that area? Is this, are we gonna be here for 3 more years? Like,
so I think that's, it's nice to be able to have that small period of time. And if you're buying right at the very beginning stage of a pre-build, you could be waiting for a year or two before you actually move into the place. And in that process, you give your deposit, usually about 5%. They lock in that 5%. They hold on to it. But you don't start paying your mortgage until you actually complete on the home. So that's one thing as well. That was a good motivator for me as being a young first-time home buyer at the time, was, I put in my 5%, and I know in 2 years I have a mortgage I'm going to have to pay. And so it was good for me to, have that time to get things figured out.
Like save money, figure out your finances,
make sure
job situation.
Exactly. And so, and at the worst case scenario, completion date shows up, and if your entire life has changed in the last couple of years, you can lose your deposit and then not have to go forward and purchase this thing unless the developer tries to sue you or something. But it's one of those things where it really is a good option for people who are in a super competitive market and they're just trying to get something. Just lock in, get your foot in the door in the real estate market. And more often than not, if everything's built and everything was done properly, more often than not, you'll find the price that you locked in when it was just a hole in the ground is far lower than what it's actually worth when it's built. And so that's one thing that
you're going to make some. I think like when you're buying something a hole in the ground, you're investing in a developer or builder. You're also like getting instant equity, in my opinion, because as soon as it's a built tangible thing, people go, oh, it's actually there now. I can move in, right? And I also think pre-builds. Last couple of things I'll say is I think you were saying about in a competitive market, it's great to buy and stuff. I also think if you're a first-time home buyer, it's a great thing to buy. Say if you're not a handy person or you don't want to do renos, or you're capped, like you're buying a $400,000 condo and you have that $25,000 for closing costs and everything done. I don't have a penny more, and some of the condos I'm looking at need new flooring or need this or need this, so their strata fees are higher, whatever it is. It's just a good way to get your foot in the door with something that has warranty, that you're not gonna have to fix anything. Knock on wood. You're not gonna have to fix anything. If it does need to be fixed, you have warranty and stuff to cover that, right? It just gives you that peace of mind the next couple of years that, hey, like this place is going to be solid. I can focus on my work or whatever it is and know that when I come home, I don't have to worry about anything.
I was definitely one of those people where, I
not the handiest guy.
No, I was like, hey, like I am putting everything I got into trying to get this mortgage and everything. And, I don't have an extra 20, 30 grand laying around to throw at renovations and stuff. I just wanted to have a place where I could throw my stuff in it and be good. And I think if you're a similar person, a pre-build makes a lot of sense, especially if you have time. It's like, hey, I'm working, I'm set up in this town. I'm not going to be leaving anytime soon.
And I'm not in a rush either. Okay, I'm not in a rush to buy. I could buy in 6 months or a year, whatever the right place was. Say, okay, well, you put your name on a pre-build as well, right? And you can figure out what you want to do, right? And then always just, like you said, you talked about, depending on what happens at the end, you can always assign it and do all these things depending on what the developer lets and stuff as well. And that's a different conversation if someone wants to get into it. But I think we kind of touched on everything.
I think that was a good kind of overview of what to expect when buying a new builds. Of course, this topic is endless and you go on forever about stratas and the nuances of purchasing a new build. But it's good for us to cover a little bit of this today, something we're both familiar with and near and dear to us, going through that process. So appreciate you guys taking a chance to listen to us again. It's always fun doing these. And if you have any suggestions for topics we should cover next, definitely let us know in the comments.
Comment below, and if you'd like to, you can subscribe.
That would be that would make our day.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks again.